Bad Boy reviewed now. I've been actually wanting to talk about this for a hot minute at this point because I feel like there's a lot that needs to be said. So Little Nightmares 3, a direct sequel to Little Nightmares 2. From what I can understand anyway, there are some characters that I think are referenced or brought up in the previous game, which has been a while since I've touched it, but at the same time, you know, it's familiar and it has that same kind of thing. The one thing about this is we have a new dev team. Supermassive took over, so it does have a different group, and you can tell, but that's not neither here nor there. Let's get into the game itself, and I'm going to talk about what I particularly did enjoy about it. The atmosphere, the sound effects, the music is always top notch in these games, and I will say that is still the case in this one. The imagery is always very double-sided, so it's almost like whenever you play a Little Nightmares game, it's like looking at adult problems or traumas or just traumas these kids are going through, and you're looking at it through a lens in the form of what a kid's imagination can come up with, and it's just such a cool representation of real problems and real traumas. And I think once again this game does take that along to it, and they make it just a nice pleasure to see as you're going through the game. That's obviously going to be the strongest thing, is the imagery. It's very dark toned, but very creative at the same time. And there's some stuff, like, again, they don't explain what you're looking at necessarily, and you kind of have to interpret it for yourself, but that's kind of a part of it. And you can maybe, you know, be like, oh, I wonder if this means that means this. And obviously, like other games, it's very similar in that regard, and you do understand the weight of the story more or less, especially this game, knowing that, did it really happen? You know, you're kind of going with like the main character and his stuffed animal in his fantasy world, pretty much his only friend where he is, and they're trying to escape all of his traumas, and it's pretty insane in that regard. So I definitely enjoyed that part of it. I will say the bosses, once again, are also unique and interesting. I've always been a fan of Little Nightmares bosses. They take a different turn, and once again, I don't feel like any of these bosses have been done in past games. They might not be the creepiest ones in like we've seen before, but it's definitely unique, and they all have their own like style to them that makes them a threat, whereas some, like, you have to stealth around, some you just have to run away from. And they did capture the magic of Little Nightmares when it comes to chase scenes and things like that. It's very tense, and that is one of my favorite parts of this type of game. So based on that, it is a solid experience, and I do like that the fact that they did add a co-op. I think it's interesting that they tried to go in a new direction. Obviously, co-op and optional co-op is always nice when possible, because, you know, you can get a friend to play with you, and these games have always felt like single player games, but there's been a lot of moments where you are literally holding the hand of someone you're escorting. It's a little bit different though, because this one, the other player gets like, you can't progress without the other player. It's not one of those situations where you lead them and you have to make sure they're safe, they can hide, whatever, and they might do some passive ability that'll help you along the way, you know, through like a programmed cutscene or something like that. But in this game, it is required on either side. It's equal, even though they're different characters and they have their own abilities. So that's kind of neat that one does one thing, the other does the other, and one is responsible for this throughout and the other is responsible for that. So you get a completely unique experience with each character as you're playing through the campaign, which now that's mainly what I liked about the game. I think it's pretty solid in that, and you can tell it's Little Nightmares, and it does keep that Little Nightmares-esque feeling throughout the game. However, let's go into what I didn't like about the game. Unfortunately, despite some of those good things that I was talking about, the changes that have been made to the game, you can tell have made this feeling like a bit of a hollow shell of what Little Nightmares is known for. It does have the essence, it has the paint job of a Little Nightmares game, but it's missing its core. It's missing that center specialness that makes these games so great. It really does feel like a different studio picked this up and continued on with it. They did change some things, and unfortunately, when you change things like turning it into co-op, there's going to be a whole new wave of problems, because when you make it a co-op focused and they say, don't worry, you can play it in single player, you are at the whim of the AI, and the AI doesn't always work as intended. Now, the one thing I will say is a lot of times the AI actually broke immersion. Like I said earlier on, the AI was actually knew where to go, so it was, at least it didn't get you in trouble, but it would literally jump over a gap that hadn't broken yet. So like I saw that in that one chase scene, the floor was crumbling, but it's known to jump over it before the crumbling even happened. It jumped right over it. So it's almost like oh, it's just following a line, it's not dynamic. And I understand that. At least the AI is there to help you out, and it doesn't really get stuck on too many things. But I just feel like it does feel very linear, and it's not as dynamic as you'd hope. I feel like if it was more dynamic, it'd probably run into way more problems. But for the most part, it does work, but it does feel like you're just missing something from this aspect. I feel like if they had just focused on a single player game, I think we would have had a much more like rich, a rich story and a rich gameplay experience, because when you have to spend time developing on things like making co-op work, you're taking away time from spending it on other things. That's why I've always found like games with multiplayer, that's fine, but you can always tell what the focus is. And when you have a single player game or a story-based game, I would much rather it be in single player. And the funny thing is, with a game that's so co-op oriented, it's very, very bizarre that there isn't a couch co-op experience. I can understand it's a little bit harder, like if one character goes off screen, you can basically freely walk around into different rooms without having your partner needing to be there, which is always nice and handy. But at the same time, I don't think it would be a huge issue if there was like a split screen. So if you deviated too far away from each other, it would just cut the screen in half, and you'd have your own screen, your partner would have their own screen. So you could still follow it and then merge the screen once you got close to each other. Lego games have been doing that for a very long time, so I don't really see why we couldn't have something like that here and on a local co-op, because not everyone is going to have someone they can play with online, because if I'm not mistaken, there is no matchmaking. It is just exclusively invite only. So if you wanted to do this in co-op, which there are exclusive co-op achievements that you can't get without having a co-op partner. One, to be specific, you can do every other achievement by yourself, but there's still one achievement you need to do in a co-op, and there isn't a cross-play either. So whatever you get the game on, that's what you're playing on. So if you have a friend who's got an Xbox, you got a PlayStation, and you're both wanting to play this game, well, you're going to be playing with yourselves. So that's all you got. Or you can try and find someone online or use a forum or something, or you know what I mean? It just restricts. I'm sure it's not a huge issue for most people, but at the same time, not everyone is going to want to just, some people might just want to blindly go in and just say, hey, I need, I don't want to, I got my friend here. He's sitting right next to me. Why can't he just join me and play? I think that's a big miss there. Obviously, as we've been going through the game as well, the biggest complaint I think I could say is the inputs and the control scheme do not seem like they work. Like most of the time, like I know I feel like people could say, oh, Dan, you're just missing it. I promise you, there was so many times when you looked like you were doing everything right and the buttons just wouldn't work. You'd be running and then you try and jump off a cliff, or sorry, not jump across a gap rather, and he would just fall to his death because the jump prompt wouldn't actually come out. And we test it many times before where I'm like, I'm running, I can sprint and run, I can do all these things at the same time. You can see it. And then once I get to the moment where I have to jump, I feel like the hit boxes, if you will, the box detection on where you jump from platform to platform, it gets confused. And if you do it too late or too early, you're too early, you don't clear the gap. If you're too late, it just essentially rolls off. It basically pretends like the input is on the edge of the polygon as opposed to being like right before or right after it. So I think that's what it is, the gap of where the edge of the polygon itself or the textures are that prevent you from jumping the box. That is way too big, and which leaves a very slim margin for error, especially when you have these achievements that require you to do, beat these bosses without dying one time. You could nail every single thing and then just go down with one bullshit thing where the prompt doesn't even work. So that was frustrating. Like trying to get like, I don't know how many times I ran into things where we tried to jump at something and grab it. It just wouldn't grab. They'd fall to their death. You'd have to reload it. And often where the checkpoints are, they're not that far away, but they usually are plopped right before an animation. So say you're doing this platforming segment and there's like a couple things you have to jump over. It might send you 2 rooms back where there was like a co-op like hatch that you both had to lift. So it's not like it's a pain in the ass, but over time, if you keep messing up the jumps, you'll have to keep going and wait for your partner to come up and lift it and wait for the animation to complete, and then you go through. I know it sounds minor, but when you keep getting stuck on this one part because something's not working the way it's supposed to, it's annoying to go that far back. So I just feel like with the way things were controlled and just the fact that everything felt kind of hollow, there wasn't a whole lot of diversity with the game itself. There was like, we went into rooms, and you gotta remember these games aren't that big anyway. that you go into a room and it looks like, oh, there's got to be a collectible in here. There's got to be, maybe this is a place where the boss would go. There was multiple rooms where they were just there. There was nothing in them. There was no collectibles. There was no reason you didn't like go in there and you're like, maybe we'll come back to this when we're being chased. They just existed, and you go in there, you look around, and you move on. Now, I'm always fine with a game that likes to increase the amount of visual or world. It almost just kind of builds like an atmosphere, and it's not really necessary. Like, you might go over to this corner, there's no pickups, nothing like that, but I've been like, you know what, I can appreciate that because it doesn't make you feel like you're in this little cramped space. But at the same time, when there's no point to something that detailed, it's almost like I'd rather you just shut the door off or just put a collectible in here or something, you know, just make it make sense to me, because quite frankly, you just made a room that has nothing in it, which is development time that you could have saved on other things. You know, I don't know. This is just my opinion in that regard. So, unfortunately, I was a bit disappointed with this game as a whole. There weren't that. I don't want to say it's a terrible game. I at all. Like, by all sense of the word, it's still a solid game. It's a fun experience. You know, it's got the. If you're really into Little Nightmares, you're going to be like into this too. But I just don't think this is an actual sequel. It doesn't feel like it's Little Nightmares 3. It feels like Little Nightmares colon and then a new title, you know, like Little Nightmares The Dream or something, you know what I mean, like a spin-off game. That's what it feels like. It should have been dubbed, and not an official Little Nightmares, like, you know, titled game, because it just doesn't, it just feels like it's just scaled down. It feels like it's just less development time spent on it. The best thing I could say is it's very similar to when you compare Dying Light 2 and Dying Light the Beast. They're not calling Dying Light Beast 3. That would be as if calling Dying Light the Beast Dying Light 3. It's the same kind of thing in this regard. Like, Dying Light the Beast was definitely a scaled down version, but it still had great qualities to it. But there were things that kept it, you know, from being an amazing game or a great game even. That's the sort of thing here, except you really have a price point that's kind of high too. You know, I think the base game, it wasn't insane when I really think about it, the base price. I think it was like 50 some Canadian, which is, I don't know, maybe 40 US, 40 pounds, 45, I'm not sure, somewhere in there. So it's definitely not like AAA price or anything, but they do have, and I have to say this, they have an expansion pass that you can get. So if you were to get the deluxe edition, that's going to be closer to one of your AAA price tags. And I think that costs around 80 bucks Canadian, like 82, 83 after tax. So that's more of your AAA kind of point. Maybe not AAA, but around that kind of line. And, you know, even if you're spending that, it seems like the content they're not giving you was content they were supposed to include as an extra chapter. I feel like this game needed 5 chapters. It was supposed to have 5 chapters, but it only had 4. So I feel like that extra DLC is literally just their way of giving you the 5th chapter, but you have to pay extra. I don't know if that's really the case, but I'm sure that's what it's going to be like. And I feel like the game just kind of ends. You know, the story just kind of stops. And you're just like, okay, there just wasn't as much richness. Whereas when you think of Little Nightmares 2, that game wasn't that long either, but it was longer than this the first time I went through it without knowing where to go and, you know, trying to get collectibles and all that sort of thing. And it felt way more of an experience than this did. There was way more to it, and that was a proper game. But I don't know, this just felt like there was too many cut corners, and it just wasn't the same kind of love, if that made sense. So again, not a terrible game by any stretch of the word. Definitely above average, not as high as I expected. My expectations were a lot higher for this sort of thing, but that's just the way things go sometimes. So to summarize, the game has fantastic visuals, and it's got a great atmosphere, good sound design, good music. The mood is very, very solid. Very, very Little Nightmares. The bosses are unique. You know, there is that feeling of like dread when you're being chased by them, and they really do have that aspect of, yes, this is Little Nightmares, this is what it does best, and I'm going to make sure people know that this isn't just some knockoff game. This is, even though it's a new dev team, this is what we're after, and they do set that tone. They set the tone well. They just don't necessarily deliver on it. You know, obviously having things like the game feeling a little bit hollow. It feels like they kind of cut some corners. I felt like there could have been a lot more to it other than the co-op element. The co-op element did restrict it in a lot of ways. The inputs were really quite poor. Things just did not work the way they were supposed to, and I feel like if they took back on those co-op elements, not being able to do a couch co-op and all these sorts of things, it really does restrict it, because a lot of people might not even want to pick it up if they can't play a couch co-op with their spouse or their friends or whatever. A lot of people like to do that, and they don't want to play with some random online if they don't, you know, who's to say their friends don't have something similar. So it does restrict things, and I feel like for that price point, I think they should have included that DLC, but I think they just wanted to release it now, meet the deadline, and then release it as DLC later. I can almost guarantee that's what happened. So despite all those things, I think the fairest score I can give this game is a 6 out of 10. I never thought I would agree with the common media, but that's kind of the scores we're getting. It is above average. It's still a fun game, but there are so many elements that pull it back down. I wouldn't say it's super mid because it is still got that specialness to it. It's not around that 5 or lower. It definitely is above average, but I think a 6 is fair given the price point and obviously the amount of content you have. Mind you, it took me over 9 hours to do 2 runs of the game to get the various achievements. I still have some achievements to do. Obviously, they're a bit grindy, but there is replay value in that sense. So I just want to give it a little bit more than a mid game at 5, just because it does have some of the specialness that Little Nightmares is for. I just really, really wish this wasn't a Little Nightmares 3. I wish it was something else. Just Little Nightmares, like I said, just a spin-off game. I think it would have probably fared better if they didn't make it a main title. So now that Supermassive, and the thing is, Supermassive can make a good game. So I'm not really sure what would happen here, so we'll see. But if what does this mean for the Little Nightmares franchise? I don't know, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens from it. I'll probably still end up playing the expansion and, you know, see how that goes. But again, that's not releasing, from what I understand, for I think next spring, and then the part 2 of that is like in the fall of that same year. So 2026 is when we get to see more of this. Seems kind of nuts, but it is what it is. So unfortunately, not as good as I was expecting, and you know, it's just the way things go sometimes. But there you have it. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you leave a like, comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Turn on those post notifications with the bell icon so you don't miss anything I put out here on the channel. Be sure to like and follow my socials: Facebook, X, Instagram, Snapchat. And Discord. Those are linked in the description. If you want to get yourself a shirt or hoodie, there's a link in the description. Also, an embedded feature right below the stream. You can scroll down and see some goodies I have there. Ultimately, just go to the website for the full range of products and customization options. Big shout out to the sponsors, of course: DX Racer, Bones Coffee, The Ridge Wallet, Red Arbor Tattoo, Jinx Custom, or not Jinx. Ignore that. Sorry, old habit. Matt, you think I'd nix that from my outro altogether, but apparently we're struggling with that. Anyway. Mad Rabbit Tattoo. I use their products daily. Check them out for yourselves with the links in the description. Be sure to use my promo code DANQ8000 to save it. Check it with them. If you guys want to send something to my PO box, there is an address listed in the description. Anything that gets sent over there will be open in a social post or a live stream, whatever makes more sense for whatever is sent. Finally, be sure to check out and sign up for the Team 8000 membership program if you haven't done so yet. That supports the page immensely. There's 4 tiers, 4 price points. Entry level is 99 cents. It's cheap. It's easy to get into the program that way. But across various tiers, you will get things like custom badges by your name, custom emojis used in chat, exclusive video and stream access, priority and open lobbies, giveaways, discounts, and plenty more. Working our way back up towards 500 members. We've been kind of kissing it every now and then, you know, a couple kisses on the cheeks, and then they're pulling away. So hopefully we can stay above 500, sitting in the high 480s at this point. So let's see if we can get back up to 500. If you guys want to help us get there, you want to support the channel, you know, get some cool perks in the process, you can join that with the link in the description. Join button is below the stream. Also a section on my main channel page as well. If you guys want to gift members or send supers, you can do both of those with the $sign icon that's next to chat. Give it a click. You'll get a drop down. If you're gifting members, just remember you can do 1 to 50 in a single transaction. Ultimately, gift as many as you want through multiple transactions. Okay. Thank you guys so much again. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we catch you very soon for the next stream. All right. We'll see you then. Take care. Peace.
Who's the man with the plan? If you feel trouble, wild and wild on these violent and hit you 8,000. Wait a minute, hold that style, it's dialed in. Goddamn Billy Jack, we still riding, tires flat. I hear them sirens, see shots flying, so we driving, fire back if they ain't vibing. Lie with that, got me dressed up in all black. What up? Hood up, and I see them haters try to run with us. They gon' need inhalers, gotta breathe them hard just like Darth Vader. Players, grab your respirators, night invaders get lightsabered. Mask on for the shooters, move like trash to bed intruder. Got that Glock and got them woofers, just press play, I'll keep it moving. Who is not still, you damn fools? Keep it fresh like canned food. There ain't nothing we can't do, so tune into that damn Q. Yeah. It was never, ever a game.